It's probably the biggest year of our lives. The next few months at the 3D level are going to be pretty wild. Because our consciousness is rising so quickly, it is destabilizing the old 3D energy. It really is the beginning of a new kind of human. There's a big dimensional split. We've never been through this before in our physicality. It feels coherent and loving and respectful to every other sentient being. This is a year of quantum jumps, particularly if you are living in a state of love, joy, gratitude, heart coherence. Many people are channeling galactic beings already, the Palladians, the Arcturians. As our consciousness opens up and we become more multidimensional, many more of us from July onwards are going to have that ability. The real physicality of them arriving is very, very likely within the next 7 years.
You are a galactic being.
You too, baby.
The shift we're going through is to reconnect to the magic of the earth. The heart coherence energy will help you play your unique sheet of music magnificently in the world.
I can't handle this anymore. This is too much. I've had chills for like 50 minutes straight.
I don't think I've ever confessed this actually in public.
Welcome everybody to the Heart Coherence Collaborative. We're so excited today. About 2 months ago, we reached out to you, the Heart Coherence Collaborative, and asked you who you recommend us interview. And many people responded saying we have to get in touch with Pam Gregory. And so since then, we've been tracking down all of your amazing work. And we were like, how have we not come across Pam yet? So Leah would love to start off with a great question, and welcome, Pam.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. It's a joy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome.
So I'd love to start off and just ask what major planetary movements and alignments are happening in 2025.
Oh, wow. How many days have you got?
We only have an hour. We have a lot of other questions.
It's probably the biggest year of our lives. Across the board. It's that big. It's just a huge pileup of planetary events. In the next 14 months, we have all of the outer planets changing sign, which is incredibly rare because they all have different orbital periods. So you've got to go back 300 years until anything similar happened like that. But if you put the dwarf planets in, I can't find a time in history where we have so many of the outer planets changing signs, if you include the dwarf planets. And we're moving through the galactic current sheet that only happens every 12,000 years, give or take 500. Many people believe, including the very academic scholar Bibhu Dev Misra, that the Yuga cycle, the end of the Kali Yuga, the age of darkness, is ending. So it's the end of a sort of 12,000 year descending cycle. I mean, I could just go on and on. So huge shifts in energy that are really, I think, signing to us that it really is the beginning of a new kind of human, a new biology, a new episode for humanity, which is very different. There's a big dimensional split, which I'm feeling very strongly myself at the moment. And we've never been through this before in our physicality. We've never succeeded in doing this, but we are right in this process right now. It's not that we're looking forwards to next month, next year, next decade. We're in it. We're in it right now.
Yeah, I think so many people can definitely probably feel that for sure. And you feeling it? You feeling it?
Yes.
All right, I would love to just go in a little bit more on one of the things you talked about, the new human, I think you were saying. What can we expect in regards to shifts in consciousness and the new human? What does that look like?
Yeah, great question. The short answer is that none of us actually know because we haven't done it before. So there's been no rehearsal. But as I understand it, we're losing density. We're moving gradually towards being more crystalline and moving towards the light body. And it really is more than anything, it's a sense of expanded consciousness, spaciousness. So we're moving away from linear time, living by the clock, being very driven, working very hard, and in a kind of logical process of you've got to do A, then you've got to do B, then you've got to do C, then you've got to do... It can happen. Healing can happen in a moment. Manifestation can happen in a moment. It's much more to do with sort of living by intention, living consciously. And also, I think we're going to develop, and it's starting already with many people. You may be feeling it yourselves, Kyle and Leah, in the work you're doing. Much more psychically sensitive, more tuned into your dreams, more telepathic with people, stronger healing ability, the ability to tune in to. I find it very much with nature, tuning into the animals, the trees, the plants, and have this sense of almost all my senses being heightened, that you're just tuning into everything being oneness, one huge humming, singing consciousness that feels, this will be a good word for you, coherent. It feels coherent and loving and respectful to every other sentient being, and there's abundance everywhere. So it isn't any longer a sense of competition and fight to get where you want. It's a sense of us all being a unique divine fractal of one consciousness, each of us having a particular gift and piece of the puzzle that we contribute to the whole. And so there's quite a kind of paradoxical quality to it, because we are going to discover more about our unique essence than we've ever done before, but at the same time, how that fits into the whole. There's going to be a much greater sense of, I'm not doing this for me and my profit and my big title. I'm doing it because I want to share it with the whole. So I think there are going to be a lot of changes in that way, but the increased psychic sensitivity with the expansion of consciousness, I think we're feeling what many of us are feeling already. That's the way we're headed.
Sounds wonderful.
How do we separate out our own direction and, choices and self-will from astrology and bring those together?
Well, I think astrology is the way to do it, actually. I think, if you want to find your unique piece of the puzzle, I think astrology is probably unparalleled in helping us do that. So I'm no longer doing client work. I just don't have time, but there are many brilliant astrologers out there, and they can show you what your unique piece of the puzzle is, what your unique spark is, and very often for me, I wrote my second book about this. This is linked to the North Node of the Moon. And the North Node of the Moon is very important in Vedic, in Indian astrology. It's the most dominant factor, really. But in Western astrology, I mean, I wasn't even aware of it till several decades in. But it's linked to the moon's orbit through the ecliptic. And it's an axis, because the moon is almost like one of those old-fashioned sewing machines that kind of bobs up and down through the ecliptic, and it goes north through the ecliptic once a month and south through the ecliptic, and it's an axis. Your south node is what you've already lived in past lives, what gifts and skills you've accumulated, and your north node is your virgin territory, where you've got to head to. What's the virgin ground at which that's your new coal face, as it were, and you've got to head in that direction in order to get your soul's growth in this lifetime. So that, for me, really pinpoints your uniqueness, and then everything else in the chart acts like the cavalry backing it up. I mean, my North Node is in Aquarius in the 3rd house. So Aquarius is weird, it's alternative, it's never mainstream, it's connected to astrology. And the 3rd house is communication. So I speak and write about weird stuff. And the whole rest of my chart, I could speak for hours and hours and hours about how the rest of my birth chart backs that up. So if you see, a very good professional astrologer, they will tell you or share with you what your unique piece of the puzzle is, and then you can start to go out and really live that fully. You've got to feel it in yourself, first of all, to really identify with it, and then off you go. And it's such a great way to get people on track. I mean, I wish in many ways I discovered astrology when I was 21, but I wish I discovered it almost as a child, because it would have helped. It's very practical as a framework for life, but it's also highly spiritual. It works on many different levels, actually. But it's such a constant, I don't know where my life would have been without astrology. It's been such a trusted guide, because it's almost like your higher self on paper, your higher self on an A4 piece of paper that is always there, always for your highest good, always there to guide you practically and spiritually. And I just can't recommend it enough to people to help you through your life.
Can I ask a quick follow-up?
No, I have like 20 questions. No, go ahead.
You're fighting now.
We've got questions.
That might be because of my zodiac signs.
It might be.
Go ahead.
Can you get a good reading from some kind of technology, or should you really employ a human?
You really need a human, because I think only the human brain can synthesize all of that information. And that takes a lot of time, because when you start to learn astrology, it's a language. It's just like any language. You have to learn, you know, A equals this and B equals that. And you do it kind of like Lego, as it were. And then eventually, as you become more proficient, it's a little bit like learning a language fluently or playing music. The whole thing starts to flow as a whole. And I frankly think only the human brain can get the weightings of all of the planets, the geometry, that it's like a multi-dimensional jigsaw. I personally think only the human brain can do that, because in the past I've read computerized birth chart, you know, printouts and even AI stuff. And I think that's just, it hasn't captured the divinity, the unique spark of this particular person. It's missed the soul.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at right now.
That makes a lot of sense. You had mentioned that this is like the most intense year to be alive, and I definitely agree. I'm curious what events are still coming up in 2025, and then how can somebody with not like a big astrological background prepare their self for these upcoming events?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are a lot of wonderful astrologers out there, and quite a few. Well, always with my videos, I translate them back to English.
Right.
You know, I sort of move beyond the jargon. But a good one to listen to would be themes for 2025, which kind of was right at the beginning of the year in January, and I was looking at the astrology, but giving the video in English about the themes I thought would come up, and that's still absolutely, you know, playing out on track. So we're going to see the continued collapse of the old order. And by the old order, I mean particularly power over systems of governments, corporations, institutions that are vertically structured, elite rich people at the top telling the poor people at the bottom what to do. And particularly where they have not operated for the highest good of humanity, they're going to crumble, because they are not born of love. And we've got a lot more love energy coming in that is destabilizing that old structured fossilized energy. So they are going to continue to fall, because a lot of corruption, I believe, is going to come to light. Any lies, any deceit, any corruption amongst those top-down structures is going to be revealed this year. And people are going to wake up and think, oh my goodness gracious, this is not what I thought. And that's going to continue all this year. So I think that's a very big theme. I think power back to the people as a result of that is a very big theme. If I look at the cycles, the big cycles we're dealing with historically, it's always been that the power has shifted to the people. One of the big aspects we've got at the moment is it happened last time when we had the French Revolution. And that's my favorite example, because the peasants who couldn't afford to buy bread stormed into Louis XVI's Golden Palace, took down the monarchy. The monarch was beheaded. That was the end of monarchy in France, and France became a republic. And within a month of that revolution, that storming of the Bastille in July 1789, the Assemblée Nationale, which was the main governing body in the judicial body in France, published something called the Declaration of the Rights of Man, and that became a foundational document for democracy across Europe. So that was the real beginning of any kind of legal rights for ordinary people. It was the birth of a middle class in Europe, that you could start a small business, you could run a farm, you could, you know, because before that just been the rulers and the ruled, the peasants. And so with this year, one of the big things we'll see the beginning of a big shift in the socioeconomic political structure, from being vertical to being much more horizontal, grassroots up, communities, collaborations, power back to the people, people coming together, buying land, growing food, saying, we're out of this, we're not playing this game anymore. You know, how do we create a more loving world? And that will be very heart-based. It'll be very spiritually based. They'll come together to meditate, to sing, to chant, to grow food, whatever. So that it's just the beginning of it this year. But I very much see that they're going to be huge technological changes. AI is an obvious one, but also innovations in technology, in understanding of consciousness, in our neural networks. Everything to do with communication is just going to explode. A lot more galactic connections, a lot more people are going to have real interactions with galactic beings that are going to be very, very helpful to give us kind of quantum leaps in how we can change our world. I think we'll have a much greater understanding of water and the consciousness of water and the need for structured water, which we bless with love, and a lot of cleaning up of the pollution and toxicity in the world. And I don't think that's going to take a very long time. I mean, I found the other day there's a fungus that loves to eat plastic on the earth. It just thrives on plastic. And then I discovered just a few days ago there's an algae in the sea that thrives on plastics.
Wow.
So, it's not going to be a slog of years and years and years to clear up a lot of the mess. I think nature runs ahead of the problem and create solutions that are going to solve things much more quickly than we can imagine, particularly if we are on a timeline of reconnecting to the earth and loving the earth. And I think many of us are going to be remembering the ancient wisdom of the shamanic and the indigenous people and going back to those traditions and ceremonies. So it's going to be, I could talk for days. It's going to be so many things happening, but we are the bridge people. We are the early pioneers in creating this new earth, because the old world is still collapsing and is going to continue to collapse for the next 2-3 years probably. But we are creating momentum with love and joy and peace and compassion to say, we're on a roll, we're rocking it, because we're going to create a more loving world, because nobody's enjoying the old world very much.
Yeah. Our mission here at the Heart Coherence Collaborative is to get people in touch with the healing power of the heart.
And we really need your help. Right now, only 1% of viewers subscribe. We are aiming to take that number to 6%.
The reason why we want to do that is the more people that subscribe, the more people in the world can learn the magical practice of heart coherence.
So please help us out. If you ever listened, if you love this message, please just take a moment to subscribe.
Thank you so much. We love you.
We love you.
Can I get a follow-up?
Yeah.
You know it's coming, right?
You bought one.
You know it's coming. Yeah, so I love that. I love where we're heading. And it just makes me actually think about, with everything coming out, kind of like you're talking about the structures collapsing, more so than ever, I think we're realizing how dark it actually has been. And maybe it's even way more dark than we had imagined. And the one thing that comes to mind for me, it just seems like the level of consciousness was not where it could be. And so I'm curious, why is there an explanation for why it's been so dark astrologically?
Not so much astrologically. I think it's probably more, I think you've got to go way, way back, thousands of years, to the earth, for whatever reason, being taken over by beings who wanted control. And that goes a long way back. And so we've been very suppressed in our faculties and our DNA and in lots of ways. But this is the time for sure, and that's astrologically marked that this is the time, and it's part of Hopi prophecy and Mayan prophecy and Quero prophecy. The many indigenous tribes who've talked about this particular time in history. And I mean, Cryon is talking about our 24th chromosome being reactivated now. So is Greg Braden, and that's the chromosome that connects us to our multidimensionality. We know that more and more people are channeling galactic beings. So once we reunite with our galactic family, we are going to go in leaps and bounds, because they're clearly more advanced intelligence than us. Otherwise, we'd be able to fly around space the way they can. So, that is going to create, I think, many new technologies and opportunities for us. So we are not going to be on a linear, slow timeline. This is a year of quantum jumps, particularly if you are living in a state of love, joy, gratitude, heart coherence. I think you're going to be so excited by what's unfolding. And the important thing is stay out of fear. you know, fear and love, as we well know, are two different ends of the stick, and you can't look at both ends of the stick at the same time. So choose love. Choose love as your docking station. Always choose love. You go into fear, you'll create more fear. Choose love. And if we can lock onto that with almost our spiritual blinkers on, there will be so much energy going into creating that new earth. I can feel it. I mean, I'm just surrounded by people who are doing stuff like this all the time. And it's so, you know, I feel my day-to-day life is so exciting because I'm actually seeing this manifest with people in all kinds of different walks of life. And they are all playing their part in, okay, how do we come together with our knowledge and backgrounds and create this? But the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and that's what's exciting, this collaboration that's happening.
Yeah, I got goosebumps while you were talking.
Good.
That's so interesting. It's very much supporting my own personal experience, and I'm so excited. The thing I wanted to ask is, you had mentioned the French Revolution, which was obviously a very violent upheaval. I didn't notice anywhere when you were talking that you were talking about any kind of violent way to this, you know, horizontal way of being and collapse of structure. Am I understanding that we're going to get there in a peaceful, loving kind of solution?
I think if that's what you want, you will. I mean, look at Serbia today. I don't know if you've seen on the news. I mean, there are about 1 million people every day out on the streets of Serbia because there's a lot of corruption in the government, and they're basically calling for the collapse of the government. So we're going to see a lot of that, I think, across Europe. And for some people, it will be their role to do that, you know, to be kinetically out on the street and challenging the system. I think we're going to see it principally in Europe and maybe even in the UK too, to some extent in the US. But for some people, that's their role, to accelerate that collapse. But it depends what role we have and what we choose. I mean, I'm not a person that goes out with placards. I've got a different role with this. So, and for me, the fastest way to get there is just to stay in love. And every night I've got a very simple, free 15-minute meditation that I think probably thousands of people all over the world are joining in on. I don't know, because there's no tech to it. But I just invited people to come together, connecting with their hearts in love, in joy, in peace, in compassion, and visualize this new earth that we're creating. And the experiences people are having are absolutely stunning. You know, they're seeing hundreds of tall galactic beings coming in to support us, and the tsunami of love that's, you know, animals from all over the world and people from all over the world going over hills and mountains and streams. And it's just thrilling. And a lot of people are seeing this grid of light getting stronger and stronger in the world. And it's just all for free. We're just doing it all energetically for nothing. And of course, many, many people are holding that kind of meditation all over the world. So we're all playing our part. But for me, my role is doing that kind of thing and using astrology as my language. Whereas for other people, it's going to be on the street. I never want to see violence. I never want to condone that. And I think it's best if the protests are very peaceful, because sometimes the people in power want to see that violence so they can suppress it, of course. So I hope that violence doesn't happen. But we are reaching a very testing point as truth comes to light. And people suddenly realize, you know, gosh, this isn't as I thought, and they will have to express in that particular way. But I hope it would never be fun. That's not what I would wish to see.
Does our new connection with intergalactic beings, I shouldn't say new for everybody, but for most of the population, does that have to do with more our shifting consciousness or astrological alignment with places where they're now more interested in coming to see us?
I think it's both, actually. I think it's as our consciousness opens up and we become more multidimensional, our frequency will lift to the point they can bring theirs down to connect to us. So there's a meeting point, which I think there hasn't been for most of us, certainly in this lifetime. Uranus is the planet connected to the galactics. It's the foreigner, it's the outsider, the one who doesn't fit. My Uranus is very strong in my chart. I don't fit, and it rules astrology. But that moves into Gemini on the 7th of July, and it stays in that sign for 7 years. So Gemini is communication. So you could literally translate that as galactic connection, galactic communication. Now, many people are channeling galactic beings already, the Palladians, the Arcturians, whatever, but many more of us from July onwards, I think, are going to have that ability to connect in our dreams, or perhaps start to speak light language, or have visitations, or whatever. I think that's going to become a much more common phenomenon. Yeah, for sure.
Wow. I keep getting goosebumps.
Yeah.
The galactic beings are here.
Yeah, they probably are, actually.
I feel like, yeah.
Yeah,
What's up,
you're
guys?
here. You are a galactic being, honey.
You too, baby.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, what can we do? What practices, what things can we do to integrate all this new information? And what do you do for practice?
Yeah, I always, every night, I will connect to my higher self, and also my star family. I call them my star family, and I just thank them for the day, and I ask them if they have any important messages to please share in my dreams, anything that I need to know. And every morning when I wake up, I say, before I open my eyes, I say, I live with love, peace, and bliss in every day. Love, peace, and bliss, and I sort of stamp those on my day. But also, more recently, I've started to say, universe, show me some magic today. Universe, show me some magic. And I walk every morning in ancient woodland. I'm very lucky here. I walk my neighbour's dog in any weather. And I'd set the intention of, universe, show me some magic today. And I was out in the woods. Usually I don't see a soul. It's absolute bliss. And I saw this absolutely magnificent, pure white stag with full antlers. Wow. And he must have been about 50 feet away from me. And I mean, it's pretty rare to see, magnificent beast like that, that's a normal colored stag, because they don't come that close to people. But to see a white stag is extremely rare. I mean, there are a few around, but they're pretty rare. And so we just stood and looked at each other, kind of eye to eye, for, I don't know, 2 minutes. And I just thought, I want this to last forever, because it was such a magical moment of kind of that he trusted me to stay that long, and then he was gone. And it really did feel magical. So I'm doing that every day now to invite magic into my life, because part of the shift we're going through is to reconnect to the magic of the earth, reconnect to the divas, the elementals, the fairies, the tree beings, in a way that we've just forgotten in our modern life. We work in offices, we're very separated from nature, we live in cities, and part of this shift is really reconnecting to the ancient wisdom of the earth, and the spirit that is alive in everything. And that's what I'm feeling very strongly right now.
Yeah, I think we should add that to our challenge.
Yeah.
Invite everybody to say, universe, please show me something magical today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fabulous. I'm loving it. I'm like a child.
Yeah, I'm going to add that every day. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I love that.
The question I have for you is the heart. We're the Heart Coherence Collaborative, so I'd love to hear your take on the heart. How does the heart help connect us to those powers out there that are greater than ourselves?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question, Kyle. And it's something I've asked several people in various fields, that very question, because I think it's partly that's where our love comes from. And so, that's the highest vibration in the universe. But our heart is also our largest electromagnetic organ, as you know, and the whole field out there of plasma is electromagnetic. So there's an inner and an outer. This is fractal. There's an inner and outer connection, which is electromagnetic, and I think that's a big part of what we're seeing here. But the other part of it, which is quite remarkable, and this came from Lee Harris when he was channeling the Z's about 3 years ago, and it also came from my good friend Janet Trelaw, who channels an aspect of Dwal Kul, called Zach. He's an ascended master, and they both said that our unique birth charts are etched in our hearts literally, physically, not just energetically, but physically. There's a very unique geometry, which is in our birth charts, because it's all geometry, which is energetically, physically in our hearts. And we are using that to interact with the cosmos. And that's why astrology works, to live out our lives. So the more coherent we can be in our heart energy, which is, I see as a kind of physiological symmetry between brain, breath, and heart, the more I think of the birth chart often as a sheet of music, and we can either butcher it or play it magnificently. And the coherence, the heart coherence energy will help you play your unique sheet of music magnificently in the world.
Love that. And we also love the Z's.
Yes. I love that so much. I would love to hear, because I can kind of imagine it, but it seems like, and since you really feel like humans do it better to do someone's chart and figure it all out, it must be like sort of an art and a science. What are you really doing? Because I've always wondered what astrologers, like, what are you actually doing?
What are we doing? It is kind of an art and a science. It's a science because you're dealing with the geometry of the planets in the heavens at the moment of your birth. So it's an out there as much as it's an in here, the Hermetic principle. But then taking that information, and it's multi-layered, it isn't just kind of 2D, it is like this multi-dimensional jigsaw, it's multi-layered. It's then, I think that's where the synthesis comes in, the art, just like how are you playing the music? And you'd have the same piece of music, but different people would play it in a slightly different, nuanced way, depending on how they're interpreting the music sheet. For me, it's the geometry. And the more experienced and proficient you are, the more intuitive you are as well, I would say, the better you can help that music come alive for that client. Because you can read it at a very pragmatic level, but it depends on the level of consciousness of the astrologer, because ultimately you can read it kind of, I think, up to the soul level of what is the soul's journey meant to be about in this lifetime. And that's determined by the consciousness of the astrologer who's doing the consultation. So yes, in that sense, it's a science and it's an art. It's very mathematical, it's very geometric, it's very astronomical, and you've got to be pretty good at maths and a lot of detail. Otherwise, it might be quite challenging for you. But then once you're experienced, it starts to flow almost like music. You can read it much more intuitively. So yes, it is not. And so, yeah, it's a language, because when people say to me, I don't believe in astrology, I say, well, that's like saying I don't believe in French. It's just a language. It's not anything to believe in. It just is. It's just a language. And it really isn't. It has rules that you've got to learn. It takes a long time to learn. I mean, it's the most intellectually challenging thing I've ever done, way more than my degree or anything like that. So, and I'm learning every day. I never stop learning. I will learn till the day I die. It's infinite. And so there's an awful lot to it. But that's one of the reasons I love it, of course. But yes, the more proficient the astrologer, the more experienced, the higher the consciousness of the astrologer, I would say, the better, fuller explanation you will get of your soul's journey in this lifetime, what you're meant to be doing with that birth chart.
So there is a part at the beginning where you're actually like, you've got maybe a protractor and you're really like doing math stuff.
Oh, I used to do that. I used to have a book of logarithms of tables of planetary motion.
Wow.
And when I was learning, you weren't allowed to use a calculator. Oh. We had to calculate a birth chart manually. You couldn't even use a calculator. But even today, I mean, where is it now? Yeah, I'll get it now. This is my absolute Bible, which is always next to me. And this is the sort of logarithms of tables.
Ooh.
And although the computer now will do the base calculation, I will just be referring to this all day long. All day long for global astrology, individual astrology if necessary. So you've got to be fairly sort of switched on with maths. But just to be clear, so I won't mislead people, I think what the astrologer can show is the pattern in the birth chart. It's down to that particular person to live it out. I don't think an astrologer should ever be dogmatic in terms of this is the life you're supposed to be leading, but rather plant seeds that these are your gifts, these are your strengths, these are your abilities, this is what you've brought through from past lives. This period in time is particularly mystical for you, a very good time to tune into your dreams, or this is a particularly good time to do X, Y, Z. Plant seeds, but never just tell someone how to live their life. I think that would be a very abusive use astrology, if you like, because it's down to the person who's got the birth chart to live their life freely the way they see. But if you have information, you can live your life much more magnificently, I think, than if you're just kind of stumbling around trying to find out day to day. You know, I think it's as I say, I don't know where my life would be without it. I think it's a wonderful tool.
I love that. So as an astrologer who has all this amazing information, I'm curious, do you have a favorite, I guess, celestial object?
Wow. Do I have a favorite? Well, I mean, Venus is special because Venus is all about love, and Venus has been our evening star recently and so bright in the sky. So it's been really beautiful to watch. But I'm very fascinated by the sun at the moment, and I've noticed recently that at sunset, and this is particularly I was abroad recently, the sunsets are extraordinary in terms of the light codes they're sending off. I mean, I've just been kind of hypnotized by sunsets with magenta and lime green and pink. And, you know, if I lived in a place which wasn't cloudy all the time, or I could see clear sunsets, it would be like a nightly pilgrimage for me to go and watch the sun. And because I think the light codes we can take in are highly evolutionary ingredients for what we're doing right now, where we're headed.
It's so funny that you say that because that's my favorite too. We live on the ocean here, and the light codes, it's like something I've never seen. And I go out on my deck every night and I stand up on my porch and I say, this is the most beautiful night I've ever seen. Because it really is every time these light codes, the pink, it just blows my mind. So, and it feels like something I've never seen before. Like that I can't remember.
Envy.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. But it doesn't seem like I remember it being like that 10 years ago, you know? It seems like it's so much more powerful. So it makes sense.
I really agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like nothing I've seen before. And I just think, wow. And you know, it's that kind of simplicity where we find our joy. You know, I think the more astrology is a very vast and complex subject, but for me now, the more we move away from the complexity of the world and into simplicity, the easier this whole transition is going to be. You know, switch off the news, switch off the noise, bare feet on the grass, listen to the birdsong, drop into your heart, drop into your breath, watch the sunset. The more you can just be in peace and love and joy, that state of being will make this transition much smoother for you. And that goes for everybody out there, whoever you are. You know, get away from the noise, get away from the polarity, the separation, the I'm right, you're wrong, all of that stuff. That's old world stuff. We're going beyond that.
Yeah, it's reminding me, I had an autistic friend and he was explaining why it was so beautiful to look at the sunset, because it was just always different and you could really be in a space where you weren't naming anything.
That's
Like
beautiful.
And I thought that really kind of makes sense.
Beautiful. Just be.
Yeah.
You know, because labeling, I think, is again old world. Oh, it's an XYZ, and that in itself can be limiting.
Right.
You know, it's the spaciousness and the expansion of consciousness that I think we want to welcome in. Just be, just welcome in the energy. Yeah, it's a very different state of being, I think, that we're welcoming in. And it's much more, and I talk about this endlessly, that it's a need to live from the inside out and not the outside in, because we spent our whole lives living from the outside in, being dictated to by externals, be external authority figures or, you know, whatever. And we're now shifting much more into our own power, where we live from the inside out. And that's a much more conscious place to live, much more intentional way to live. And that's gonna change the world if we can do that.
I just got a new phone, and I made sure not to download any of the apps that would take my attention. And it's been a few days and I feel like a completely different human. I'm not like looking down. I'm here and I will not download any of the social medias or anything because I want to live the life like you're talking about.
In fact, I have a mobile phone, but I switch it on maybe once a month if I need a verification code. I just switch it on. I mean, all my friends know it's just impossible to get me by text. I just never. And that's a very conscious decision of I do not want to be dominated by my mobile phone. I have enough input in my day via the computer. I just won't do it. And, and they all know. So, or they find out quickly and give up.
Yeah.
So where do you come from? Do you come from like a hippie family? Do you come from like a very stiff upper lip English family? How did you end up being an astrologer?
Yeah, no, not at all. My parents were, quite poor in the north of England, and very straight, conventional people. No spiritual interest, no religious interest, nothing. And I don't think I've ever confessed this actually in public, but I grew up in the north of England, and that's an area that has a very strong accent. In fact, different vocabulary. It comes from the original Viking invasions. And so I had a very impenetrable, what they call Geordie accent.
Yes.
You gan yam the man means, are you going home now? It's a very, even for other English people, it's very hard to understand. Anyway, at the age of 7, I won a scholarship to a very academic school about 10 miles away. And they were all sort of daughters of doctors and architects. And nobody understood a word I said. So the teachers gave me free elocution lessons. And that changed my life. So I sound nothing like I sounded as a child. So I don't think I've ever confessed that. So I couldn't have done all these things in communication, Anyway, that's that. And then after university, I emigrated to Canada, to Toronto. And in the first week, I joined a yoga class. And there was a big guy from Jamaica at the class. And at the end of the class, a couple of the girls said, he's an astrologer. So I went to see him and said, look, I know nothing about this, but love you to do my chart. And the next weekend, I spent 7 hours with him and he just blew my mind. And I haven't stopped studying astrology since. But I think he disappeared soon after. I think he was an earth angel just there to reconnect me, because I've done this in previous lifetimes. I mean, I just know I have. I even know who I was in previous lifetimes doing this. So, so that's how I landed here, in short. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's so interesting. And it all kind of has to fit together. I would have imagined that you were from kind of like a high class, because you speak, you can really tell where people are from in England by their accent. So,
and my family was pretty dysfunctional. I had a pretty extreme childhood that I never talked about publicly, but it wasn't great, because people think I just, have come from an incredibly rich, privileged family, and I'm sitting here on my sofa and life has always been perfect. Believe me, that is not the case. Believe me, that is not the case. But I think you learn wisdom through challenge. You don't learn it through ease. So I'm grateful for all that's happened. But my life has got much easier in about the last 15 years. But a lot of it was extremely difficult. I was very, very ill for a very long period of time. But I met some amazing people around, along that journey. So it was all part of the contract, I think.
We hear a lot of people talking about like the two Earths, especially a few years ago. People were saying that the Earth is splitting in two. And I heard you say that you need to choose. If you choose fear, you're going to get fear. So I'm curious what your take is on, the planet shifting into two Earths. If you believe in that, where we're at in that process and what's happening.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Carl. I don't believe it's two physical Earths. I believe it's two different dimensions of reality. And I'm actually seeing that, I'm sure you are too, in my day-to-day life, because a lot of my people I spend time with are on the same page as us. They're excited about the future, they're inventing stuff, and have you seen XYZ? And I've got this new water device, blah blah blah. And getting very excited. I've seen astrology for this next couple of weeks. Getting very excited. And then I meet with friends who I've known for a long time, and they're listening to the news and getting absolutely distraught about the war and the politics and what's going on. And that is a different reality. I may live a few yards from them, literally in the same road, but they are living in a different reality because they're living in fear. And so I always say, well, how do you even know that's true? how do you know for sure if you're not on that piece of land in that geography? How do you absolutely know that that's happening? It may not be. So don't, waste energy, share compassion if you feel it is true, or send money, or meditate, or do something, but don't waste all that negative energy in engaging with something you don't want more of, because you're creating more of it in every moment. But I can see that dimensional split literally day to day in my own life around here. I mean, I live in a tiny hamlet in this forest, and all of my neighbors, have a very different understanding of how the world works to me. They have no idea what I do, which is quite funny, actually, because it's quite refreshing. They just think I'm probably watching television all day. I don't have a television, but their reality, I absolutely know, is completely different from mine day to day, and they can't understand why I'm always so happy.
Yeah. Yeah, it almost comes back to just, these almost emotional addictions. And it's like we have to eventually take responsibility from them. And a lot of people just aren't conscious that it's actually their own attachment to these certain emotions, and when you actually can watch it and say, oh, wow, I'm actually choosing to feed this emotional body, and I don't have to do that anymore. I think that's the ascension process. And,
I think that's a really,
yeah.
really important point, Kyle, if I can just jump in there. Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt.
No.
It's the awareness that you have a choice. It's the awareness that you have a choice, because I'm quite workaholic, and I'm really trying to observe that from my eagle's perch and say, it doesn't have to be this way. Stop it. You don't have to spend hours and hours and hours and hours and, over preparing, because actually, if you just let it flow through you, it's actually going to be better, and you're not worn out at the end of it. So, but it's the conscious observer position to allow you to see you have a choice. And increasingly going forwards, in all these little mini micro choices in our day, we have to choose flow, choose love, choose divinity, and be aware we're moving into a very different mode and a very different reality. So that's why I wanted to just jump on that point you made.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thank you.
Do you see in the next few years that there is going to be people making spiritual or channeling contact with other galactic entities, or any actual physical contact with Earth?
I think there could well be physical contact too. I mean, the first is happening already. I mean, for instance, a couple of weeks ago, I had a wonderful conversation with a chap called Dr. David Clements, who was a theoretical physicist and very much a mainstream academic, PhD, advanced degrees in maths and physics from Oxford and Cambridge, our big universities. And then he started to be contacted by galactic beings, the high Elohim and Palladians and Arcturians. And that turned his life around. He abandoned everything he'd learned in a textbook. And they now download concepts for him to build regenerative technology to help humanity. And they just download a quantum concept, and they know he has the physics knowledge to build that, to create that. So they're working with him, and they're there all the time, just all the time when you're talking to him. So I had 2 conversations online with him, which were phenomenal. And so he is one example, but it's happened to many, many people I know. He's one example of really doing work for humanity, putting that galactic connection into practice. But yes, many people channel, but I think that the real physicality of them arriving is very, very likely within the next 7 years, because Uranus is moving into Gemini, and that galactic contact, our family galactic contact, will become much more obvious to us. Yeah, for sure. I'd say in the next 7 years.
I feel like I'm mesmerized. This whole conversation. Just kidding. I just hit an overload point where I'm like, I can't handle this anymore. This is too much. I've had chills for like 50 minutes straight.
Goosebumps.
Yeah. I would love to know how we can support you. How anyone listening can support you and get in touch with your work. I know you have a fantastic YouTube channel. How can our users find that? And what else do you have going on?
Yeah, that's the main thing. I mean, I used to do a lot of writing, which took a lot of time and didn't reach as many people. So I've really made the decision at the moment that I'm going to pour all of my energy into my YouTube channel, because then It's the most efficient way I can get new information, I hope good information, helpful information out to people, to a lot of people for free, and they don't have to pay for it. I very much want the information to be free for the people. So it's really my YouTube channel, which is just Pam Gregory, and there are loads of scammers out there. Ignore the scammers. You know by the subscriber base. I've got about 370,000 subscribers now, which is terrifying actually, but that's how you know if it's a scammer or me. And it's just Pam Gregory Official on YouTube. And I put out a lot of videos, a lot of astrology updates, but sometimes I'm being interviewed, other times I'm interviewing other people. Did a lovely one recently with Lee Harris, and I know
we love him.
That's a good
different one with Lee Harris. So a very big variety of content there that people can just go and explore all for free. And that's absolutely what I want. So yeah, that's the best place to go. I'm doing no live events at the moment, no big writing. I'm just pouring all of my energy into that to help people.
Very cool.
That's awesome. Is there any last message? This is going to get released, in maybe a couple of months. So through the summer, do you have any message for everyone listening? Anything they should do or know or focus on?
Yeah, I mean, the next few months at the 3D level are going to be pretty wild. Because our consciousness is rising so quickly, it is destabilizing the old 3D energy. And because you can't have these two very different levels of energy existing at the same time, the higher frequency energy will always win out. It's a principle in physics called downward causation. So it's creating churn and collapse at that 3D level. So it's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess at the 3D level. There's going to be all kinds of systems not working, systems breaking down, a lot of corruption coming to light, a lot of things not working. Could be all kinds of war drums going on. And I'd really say to people, just stay in your heart. You create your day from the inside out, stay out of the noise, and lock onto love as your docking station. And just decide, I'm beaming out love, joy, peace, gratitude all through your day, and see yourself as a lighthouse living from the inside out, and ignore all that crazy stimulus from the outside in. That's what I'd say.
I absolutely love this interview so much. And if you ever need anything and we can support you in any way, we have a great loyal community that would love to support you in any way possible.
Bless you. Well, you're doing wonderful work, both of you, and wonderful, wonderful work. And heart coherence, excusing the pun, is at the absolute heart of where we're going. If we haven't got that, we haven't got that physiological harmony operating. So heart coherence is absolutely fundamental in that state of being to create a wonderful world from. So thank you for all you're doing in the world as well, and to your community as well.
Thank you
Thank you so much. I hope you come back with us again. Kyle needs more goosebumps.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can handle it.
Love it. And you ask great questions. So
thanks.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Bye,
We're sending
everybody.
love to everybody.
Love you.
Lots of love to everyone. Bye for now.